Agenda is the evacuation procedure. On hearing the evacuate signal, please carry out the following: exit the building by your nearest safest exit. All visitors report to assembly point G. All staff to their designated assembly point on Woolpack Way car park. Do not leave the assembly point for any reason until told to do so by the incident controller or fire brigade officer. Item number 2 is apologies for absence.
Full house, yeah.
Thank you. Item 3 is any disposable pecuniary and non-pecuniary interests. Item number 4, participation.
No questions. Yeah.
Item number 5 was the meeting of the board held on the 15th of October this year is herewith to be approved as correct record. Proposed by Councillor Simpson and seconded by Councillor Watson, Steve Watson. Thank you. All those in favour? And that is unanimous. Thank you. Item number 6. Before I'm going to welcome Chris Brown and Zola Dudula from Azets. Very nice to see you. Thanks for being with us. Item number 6 is the external audit plan for 2024-25. The report presents the 2024-25 external audit plan for Azets, Council's external auditors, and also an update from the Corporate Director of Resources on the close down process for the same year. Members have received reports previously on the issue of disclaimed audits and the delay to the publication of the 24-25 accounts. So the external plan has been circulated, and I'm pleased to welcome Chris and Azola to present this plan. Thank you very much. Over to you. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. So yeah, as you mentioned, the last 3 years of accounts have been disclaimed now. So we knew that for 24-25 we were going to have to disclaim those accounts as well. And at the moment we're targeting 27-28 as the year that we're hoping to remove disclaimed audit opinions and go back to the proper audit opinions. The reason for that is that we need 3 years worth of balance sheets. We need to have audited 3 years worth of balance sheets before we can remove a disclaimer, so that we have the year we're auditing, we have the comparatives from the year before, and we have the comparatives for the year before that for the income and expenditure differences between the 2 years. So this plan is an attempt to try and summarise the situation that we're in and to summarise the plan for getting us to that point of removing the claims by 27-28. But it's a very complicated situation that we're in. So there's a lot of detail in this plan, and it's the time we issued it in May. One of the reasons it's draft is that there's a bit of a moving feast, because at that point there was no national approach agreed to how we're even going to do this. Since then, a national approach has been agreed, and all of the firms are working with their clients, in our case with Paul and his team, to work out how to approach the challenge. And essentially, because we've got now 3 years where there's no assurance on the income and expenditure that's gone through your accounts or the balances at the year end, we're having to go back as the finance team are as well to review previous years and just confirm that those are accurate. And we're doing that based on a risk assessment that we're carrying out as part of this year's audit. So essentially, our approach this year is a very detailed risk assessment and as much testing of those previous years as we can do this year that helps us build assurance for the future. So everything we're doing it for the purpose of building assurance for probably 27-28. Paul and I were just chatting. We need to achieve that situation 27-28, because that's obviously the date for potentially transferring into new structure. And if we haven't recovered the situation by 1st of April 2028, and organisations then cease to exist, it'll become increasingly difficult to recover the position, and it might even become impossible at some point. So, the main focus of our work this year, as I say, the risk assessment, going back and testing previous years, and work on value for money, because our audit doesn't just cover financial statements, it also covers value for money work. And the report that Isola is going to present in a second summarises our findings from this year's value for money audit work. I'll pause and ask if anyone has any questions in a second. The only thing I'd add to all of that is, well, in fact, I'll pause at this point in terms of the audit plan and ask if anyone has any questions on the plan itself.
Councillor Simpson.
Chairman, it's sort of not knowing really where to start, or if there's any point, because we've asked all these questions and we are still in the same place. And if I wish to be reasonable, well, I see no great requirement of me to be reasonable. I understand. But what I really struggle with is this, that we're planning to fail. We may be planning to get it right in the long term, but the justification for getting it right in the long term is that we won't exist. Which is what I thought I heard. We've got to get it right for the next authority rather than getting it right for ourselves. Surely that's not a good enough plan. It's not a good enough plan. That's going to cost us. It doesn't tell us how much it's going to cost us. It tells us it costs us nearly £145,000, but it doesn't say what it's going to cost us next year. So I'm signing off on something which isn't going to get me where I need to get to, and I don't know how much it's going to cost. Why would I vote for that?
Okay. Chris.
I mean, we're not asking for approval for this plan, so we don't need to vote for it. But these are good questions. And the 27-28 is the earliest that is possible to recover the situation. Because, as I said, we need 3 years worth of audited balance sheets, and at the moment we have no years worth of audited balance sheets. We don't have accounts for 24-25, so we can't audit this year's accounts because we don't have any. 25-26 is, ostensibly the first year that you could start going back, because there's a pensions, triennial pensions valuation that comes in 25-26. So even if we did have accounts for 24-25, we'd still be missing those pension assurances, which we won't get until next year. So that 3 year build back period has to start really in 25-26, 26-27 the second year, and 27-28 the third year. Realistically, there's no way of doing it quicker than that. That's just unfortunately the way it is. We could spend a bit of time explaining why that is, if you'd like to go into the details of it. But all the other councils that are in your situation have the same time scale and the same timetable for recovery as you do.
Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Chair. Just picking up on Councillor Simpson's point, and I'm not an accountant, and I've already kind of made these comments before. Why? It almost feels like to me you're saying, oh, did I have enough money in my bank account in 23-24? Well, do you know what? Who cares to pay my bills? Well, I must have paid them because it's finished, it's over, it's done. It almost feels like we're trying to kind of ascertain something that's past just to get an assurance on a number for the future. Can we not just put a stake in the ground and go, right, where we are today, this is what we have in our bank, this is what we owe, this is what it takes to run the authority, and almost start from there, because this is about assurances, and we've been assured that the processes and checks and balances to run us in a sustainable and well-run way are in place. So we're comfortable that our finances are in a good place. It just feels like we're trying to do, it's an awful lot of work to almost kind of go, oh yeah, you did really well 3 years ago, so that we can get to the point where you're going, oh, you're all right next year. Or am I oversimplifying?
Chairman, if I could just to emphasise, the materiality that we're looking at is 1.1 million. So it'd have to be a whopper of a mistake and a misstatement to actually feature, wouldn't it? So are we saying that within all of this, we don't know if there are any errors bigger than 1.16 million?
Or an accumulation of errors. over the last 3 years. So you're right, the bank balance is something we can audit easily. And most of the assets and liabilities we can also audit easily. What we can't audit is the makeup of the reserves situation. So how much of your general fund reserves or usable reserves, that's dependent on the accounting for what's gone in the last 3 years. So that's the biggest problem, is trying to recover that situation. And yeah, I mean, I share your frustration on it. We've been trying to encourage the government just to deem the balances to be accurate and correct and just let us move. The accounting regulators won't let us do that. So they've said, any audit that happens after that will not be a proper audit because you don't know that that's the case. You have the assurance to back it up. But yeah, I understand your frustrations, and it doesn't seem to make a lot of sense. The reason you're in this position is because your previous auditors didn't do the audit for 2 years. And we're having to recover that situation.
Yeah. I won't repeat the comments made about our previous auditors.
So,
Get Simpson.
I know we've asked this before, but it's worth trying again. Given that the problem seems to be because our previous auditors didn't do it, and they're operating under the same regime as our current auditors, is there no possibility of going back to those people and forcing them to do the job they were paid for? Because the fee wasn't materially different to the 140,000, 150,000 we're paying now.
Well, we've been there before. I've got Councillor Reardon. Will come in now?
Thanks, Chair. It does feel a bit like deja vu, I have to say. Are there any other councils who aren't in this position, and if so, what's the difference between them and us?
There are councils where their accounts are up to date. Yes. I'm not sure how many overall in the sector are behind, but yeah, we need to confirm that. But it's a large number. I mean, my guess would be roughly half of the councils are behind in terms of their accounts. So some councils are up to date with their accounts. Reason is because the audit firms that they had as auditors had enough resource to do the audits on time, and the finance teams had enough resource to prepare good quality accounts on time, and they worked together and kept the thing up to date. And we have a lot of clients in that position. And most of our clients that we've inherited through PSAA are in a similar position to yourselves. And the reason is the same for all of them. And the solution is the same for all of them. So you're not in an unusual position at all. But it's a completely unsatisfactory position that you're in. And you should make representations, I think, about it, because I don't think it's acceptable, really. And it's going to cost a lot of money to recover.
Paul.
So to Councillor Simpson's point, we have made representations to PSAA. Funding has been provided by government to help build back is the term they're using, and they have provided tiered funding based on how many disclaimed years you have, and so we received the maximum amount of funding from them. It was in that table that again I can't remember the numbers off the top of my head, but I will share it to the exec board. But we have received a significant amount of funding to help build out this position. That doesn't change the past and change what happens completely unsatisfactory. Previous auditors were paid money to do a job, they didn't do that job. I think we all acknowledge and recognise that that's far from what should happen.
No, I have one particularly awkward and sarcastic question. Given all we know about internal audit and the comments on key financial controls, could our two senior officers give me their opinion of the auditor's assessment of the management override of controls. If that's the only one I've read in here where the list of material misstatements because of the management override of controls is very high.
So management override of controls comes when people in positions like myself have too much power and too much control within the system. I don't have that, so I don't approve invoices. I don't journals. I don't do journals, and that is recognised within the audit process. So it's about being able, physically able to do things that I shouldn't be able to do, and the system prevents me from being able to do that.
So through you, Joe, do you then disagree that the risk of material statement is very high?
No, because I understand the premise that that it's coming from, that someone in our positions with the power and authority that we have could exert control that could result in the management override of finances, which is why the system is set up in such a way that prevents us from being able to do that.
And is that improved by having the internal audit view of our key financial controls as being perhaps not a good
It's one of the points that's within, and one of the recommendations that's within the report, but it's recognised that the controls are in place because we don't have the ability, we don't have the power through the system, and the controls prevent us from being able to do those things that would override the finance.
Chris.
So yeah, just very briefly. So we're required to assess the risk of management override as being very high on all audits.
That's what's the point.
So auditing stuff. So audit. What's the point?
If you're required to take very high, well, what am I paying £145,000 to tell me very high?
Well, so what we're saying is the risk, our plan is the risk is very high. Therefore, we need to do more audit work to get assurance that there hasn't been management override or controls. And the reason we're required to assess the risk is high is because in businesses that go bust very frequently, it's because management have manipulated financial records and the auditors haven't picked it up. So auditing standards now require us to assume that management may well have overridden controls and then to do testing to prove that hasn't happened. That's one of the things we're trying to do as part of the audit. That's an assumed risk across all audits. It's not something that's specific to this council.
And Jim, I do get the difference between risk and neutrality, tempered always by the materials you'll have the 1.16 million.
I've got Councillor Stewart, Councillor Reary, and then Councillor Simmons.
I'll pass.
Okay. Councillor Reary.
Just to follow up to my previous question, so from what I understand from what you said, so there's two factors: one, inadequate resourcing in the finance team, and the second was poor choice of auditor. Can I just clarify, did we choose the auditors or were they given to us by the government?
They are given to us, well, not directly by the government, they're given us through the ESAA.
Oh, yeah, that's,
Yeah, so we don't have a choice.
Yeah.
We don't have a choice on who audits us, and we don't have a choice on how much they cost us for them not doing that audit.
I just couldn't quite remember from the
No.
last meeting.
Councillor Simmons.
It's all right, it's been addressed. I was going to come in on the high risk element of being an assumption for all audit rather than actually how we've been assessed.
Thank you. Okay. So I think that's the questions done on item 6. So we're noting the plan.
Noted.
So I'll propose
Just ask one question.
on it, just in time, Councillor Simmons.
So with the going concern concept, obviously, if we can't have checks on balances, opening balances. How do you, apart from the fact that we are continuing authority and all the other things to that, can you just explain how you give assurance through the audit of that we to the public?
That you're a continuing going concern. So
If you can't confirm reserves, so therefore you can't assume the forward trajectory.
So what we can't confirm is the exact makeup of your reserves. Yeah. So, however, we can get assurance and we get this through management's assessment of going concern of the council. So it's partly through management's own assessment of going concern. And the reason we do reasonableness checks on those assessments. And it's partly through the fact that the council is a public sector body providing essential public services. So even if the organisation for some reason wasn't a going concern, like other councils in the local area that have gone bust, the government would support it. So the assumption, so the going concern assumption is more around the continuity of services rather than the continuity of the actual council.
On the basis that it's pre-underwritten.
Yeah, so even in the year before merger happened, local government reorganisation happened, the councils will all still be going concerns because of the continuity of services into that new organisation, even though the existing councils will cease to exist.
It's odd, but reality. But, and you know, we've had, well, I've had this conversation, and that's the huge difference because, you know, a chief exec of a council will never have to go into his staff and say, you know, we're busting you all out of a job because of that underwriting. And we'll take Woking as a prime example of that, you know, they've just been bailed out to start with £500 million. You know, that's how much in the mire they are. But the government has stepped in and said, to start with, we'll give you 500, I'll say it again, £500 million. How much? Saying it that badly. And that's to start with. Anyway, so I'll move that we note the report from the chair, seconded by Councillor Stewart. All those in favour? That is unanimous. Thank you. Item number 7 is the auditor's annual report. So, the report presents the annual audit report from 23, 24 and 24 to 24, 25 from ZETS. And I'm going to hand straight over to, I think it's Zola, isn't it?
Can I just introduce this quickly, here, and then I'll pass it over to Zola. So, first of all, it's a bit of a strange thing for us to be giving our auditor's annual report before we've actually finished the audit. So we're not going to be actually giving an opinion on the audit or disclaiming our opinion rather on 24-25 until February. But the National Audit Office from this year have prescribed that all auditors need to issue an auditor's annual report by the 30th of November. And that's partly because in the previous regime, auditors just weren't reporting at all. So your previous auditors not only was that the audit's not happening, but they also weren't giving you any information on those audits that weren't happening. That allow you to challenge them at the time, which would have been the appropriate time to challenge them. So we're now required to present the position that we're in every year by the 30th of November. And at some point that will coincide with the accounts sign-off timetable. It's coming back every year. This year's February. Next year it's due to be, I think, December or January. I'll come back to 30th of November is the plan. I mentioned earlier, the financial statements is a big part of our audit. The other big part is value for money, and that's what this report covers, mainly covers value for money. So I'll just pass over to Azola to present the highlights from the audit.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Chair. As Chris mentioned, this is one of the part that we mentioned in our audit plan that we're going to be doing for the 24-25. And this report again is covering the 2 years, which is something we guided from the National Audit Office. If needed, one of the things that probably the recognition from the finance team, because I think without the support to get this report, we probably would have issued to follow the national guidance, we would have issued in the report. But from that support, we were able to provide a fully commentary report. Obviously, as mentioned, some of information from 2025, which is the key, which is the financial statement. But if I can just go through with the report quickly. We, in the previous year or the predecessor auditors, they have raised a key recommendation, which is the significant weakness around the closing down and providing financial statement. They acknowledge that recommendation is being open, mainly because of the issues that have been affecting the financial system and also the financial team. But we recognize the fact that the current section 151 has put some more resources which will be in contact with. We started the audit, we started on the audit back in 2023, and if I can compare between then and now, there is quite a lot of engagement between the external auditors and the finance team. The recommendations still stand until we are able to meet the deadline of the issuing of the financial statement, which is normally around May, June period, depends on the publication from the central government. In the report, we comment about the financial sustainability, governance, and the improve economic efficiency and effectiveness. And from our review, there is no concern that we have around financial sustainability, but we know a couple of other recommendations which are not key areas. One of them is to do with minimum revenue provision guidance and the clear review that has been actions, and it was I think it was published at the start of the year or in prior year. And we know that the council has been actioning all of those recommendations that have been included there. But again, the report is covering the year that we are auditing and also the previous year. So it was great for us to know those areas. If we move on to the governance section, we also here didn't identify any key issues which we can say is a significant weakness. But we also know the fact that there was the couple of other recommendations, which is to do with the risk management policy, council constitution update, and internal audit, and internal audit recommendation and internal audit work. I think I wanna put more details on the internal audit. I think from the work that we do, if for example I make an example of making a bread, we make all the ingredients. The internal audit are the one who get involved with how the ingredients are combined to make up the final bread. So if, as from our side as the external audit, we only come in when the bread is already made and we taste it to see if it actually is what you would have expected. So it is very, very key important that those internal audit recommendations, because they deal into areas that are affecting financial controls, which at the end of the day is what we look at to say that if the number that is showing in the account is supported by information or approval of documentation from key official within the entity. We stress that there were a couple of delays that have been issued with the internal audit. And however, from what we have discussed and what we have seen previously in the current year, we've noted a significant improvement from that engagement. If I move on to the last part, which is the improved economy efficiency and effectiveness. Again, what we noted was to do with the financial the financial system migration, which is an unfortunate event that when there is a new finance system being introduced, there's quite a bit of issues that the council will experience. We have been in discussion with the finance team, and we're aware that they are busy working on the reconciliation to make sure that when we get the financial statement, we can be able to reconcile. That is all the recommendation that we have raised. Happy to take any questions from the report.
Thank you. Oh,
If I could just quickly add, so as management, we've accepted all of the recommendations, all of our comments, so are included within the report. I'm really pleased to hear that the additional resources that we're putting in are starting to kind of bear some fruit, and we'll continue to kind of push that to get us back on track.
thank you. Councillor Simpson.
I think I understand the answer, but I'd just like to be really clear. So the recommendation on, I guess, page 51 of 112, failure to prepare timely accounts, council should address the reasons for the delay and ensure there's a suitably resourced finance team that can ensure all statutory requirements regarding reporting are met. I think we're saying we've done that. Doing that. So my question then turns to you. Is there anything else that the auditors feel we should be doing aside from what we've done? Because this is, presumably they base this recommendation in the knowledge of what we're doing. And if it's based in the knowledge of what we're doing, there seems to me to be a key recommendation that we should do more. Is that, have I understood that?
So, the finance team has been strengthened, and as Ola mentioned, our engagement with the finance team is a lot better this year than it was last year, but you still haven't prepared any accounts. So the point is that you're missing the statutory deadline for preparing your accounts, and you missed them again this year. The 24-25 accounts haven't been prepared yet. And until they are prepared on time, we're going to keep that have to keep that recommendation in.
Okay, I understand. Thank you.
Okay, I don't see, Councillor Barnish.
Thank you. I noticed that one of the recommendations was a £2 million shortfall for next year, and that we're going to have to address that in your budget. The medium-term fiscal strategies kind of have that kind of picture down the road. We have had money in the budget for the last few years for Invest to Save, and I don't think anything has come of any of that. I think I've asked a couple of times, and we were investigating options, but I don't think anything's materialised. Do we actually have some ideas how we're going to save that money?
Yes. But that's all changed given the announcement by the government of the fair funding, which is, one could argue that it's not actually very fair. In fact, we're going to be one of the biggest losers under the fair funding. So we're rejigging, clearly we've got to rejig, and the budget for the 26-27 will be an interesting meeting, I think. But obviously we're working through the implications of the fair funding, and also looking at the implications of everything else. Given the policy changes government have made, and looking at how that's going to affect us financially with the savings targets, etc. Absolutely.
So I did have one other question as well. The recommendation is to give delegated authority to approve a final version of this. If the submitted version is different than what we've got in front of us, can we make sure that's shared with all members?
Absolutely. Yeah. Councillor Martin Watson.
Thank you, Chair. At the risk of just glossing over it, why haven't our accounts been done?
combination of reasons. The accounts 23-24 were delayed, the audit was delayed. As the auditors set out, we didn't have sufficient resources in to be able to close the accounts, but the system is the biggest issue. So the issues that we've got with the system, like I said here before, for a long period of time, we haven't got income for 24-25 in the system. That is now in, and it's reconciled, and we're working towards closing down the accounts, getting the outturn and closing down the accounts. All of it is concertinaing into February, which is scary, and it's December next week, the week after. The timescales are extremely tight. Once some of those things happen, so the point on fair funding is key. We will get a provisional settlement in the last week before Christmas. Until we get the provisional settlement, we won't know what funding we're going to have for 26-27. I am pretty clear that we will have more funding than we put in the budget last year. We took all of the growth out last year. The fair funding formula says that we will have a 5% floor, so we will lose 5% income. Our growth is about 5 million, and 5% of 5 million isn't 5 million. So that's good. But we need to see the numbers before I put my Christmas decorations up and wish myself a Merry Christmas. As I say, it will definitely not be as bad as we are projecting, which is where the £2 million saving a year comes from. It's good mathematician to work out that actually the numbers suggest it might be okay. We took £4.5 million through 24-25 into reserve, and the plan in 25-26 was to do the same thing. So business rates growth has been very productive for us. The fair funding resets some of the growth, but not all of it. And so we'll wait to see the detail before we can actually finally put a budget together which says this is how much funding we think we're going to get, and this is how much we think we're going to spend.
Okay. I don't see any other hands, so I'll move the recommendation from the chair, seconded by Councillor Simpson. All those in favour? Very much. And many thanks to Chris and Azola for attending. You're more than welcome to stay for the meeting if you so desire.
It's got his overcoat on.
Make me short. That's the kitchen.
Yeah, no. In all seriousness, really, it is very nice to see our auditors here in person. And you mentioned you probably heard me say it before. The previous auditors, and you said, they didn't turn up. Sometimes they would appear online, and then as for questions, they wouldn't answer them. Would they, Councillor Simpson? It was as bad as that. So thank you very much. Okay. Item number 8 is the local development scheme. February 2025, the council must maintain a local development scheme, and the latest version is presented to this board for approval following consideration last week by the LDF subcommittee. Any comments, queries? Just not as exciting as the audit, is it? Councillor Watson.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I mean, this is the twice
For you, Chair, the implementation of the policy, nothing. It's just something that we need to do as part of the Legal Procurement Act that came in February of this year.
But the report tells me it's not a requirement of the act.
The report, sorry,
The report tells me it's not a requirement. It's a recommendation. It's advisable. Councils have a policy in place. It doesn't say it's a requirement.
no, it recommends that we do.
It recommends that it's advisable.
So one of the key things from the Procurement Act is the bit about the mat and meet. So before when we were in PCR 15, so the previous to February, you could kind of go for the cheapest, and that was the sort of the most favourable route for procurement. Now it was not to go for the cheap is not the best. So it's you're taking on things that you would link into your carbon, your environmental benefits and things like that, which came in with PO23.
I'm not aware, Chairman, that we always went for the cheapest, because I can think of quite a few things where we went for, the second or whatever it was based upon those other criteria. I'm just,
No, absolutely. I mean, it's,
where are we going? And is this making any difference to what we've actually been doing?
yeah, I always understood from procurement before, it wasn't cheapest, it was best value, and you're right, and not always is the cheapest the best value, because you get what you pay for, so to speak. And I think in essence, it's the same. But I suppose frustratingly, they're trying to influence around, the green climate change agenda and trying to put a bit of weight on that, which again is wrong because, in my opinion anyway, we should be adopting the same sort of principles and the best value, regardless of if one supplier is going to plant a few trees and another one's not. It's about what you're getting for your money, and that's the key thing, isn't it?
And it's about locality as well.
Yeah.
So can something be provided within the local community rather than Scotland, for example? And please feel free to chip in if you wish.
It gives us options, so then the council can decide what weighting to give to these. And this is discussed in management team in terms of if something's twice as expensive as in Scotland rather than locally, then it's up to us to go for the one that's not twice as expensive. However, on a like for like, it allows us to put criteria in to see what can be drive your economic development in the local area. So it's environmental, it's economic and social, and what way you put onto each of the streams will depend on each issues. But we certainly will be recommending spending twice as much just because it's local, because it's a global economy, with a circular economy, and who knows where our people work and the supply chain. So it just gives that option, but it brings, because the procurement changes, just brings that more to the fore, which could be useful for the legislature.
So through you, Chairman, is the Chief Executive saying we didn't do that?
I don't think we did it quite as systematically. We didn't do it in accordance with the new procurement. So this just confirms that how we will go about setting those weights.
Through you, Chair, it's about putting the policy in place. We were doing it anyway, but it's just about having that policy in place and making sure that our officers are aware that we've got that policy in place. So we wouldn't be buying things, for example, from China just because they're cheap.
So just to clarify, Chairman, I have no issue in codifying what we do, which I think is what this is saying. But my concern is, are we really going to be doing anything that is materially different to what we do now? And I think the answer is it's how we document what we're going to do in advance of doing it.
Yeah, that's we're not doing anything greatly different. We're just writing down what and how we're going to do it. Paul and then Councillor Stewart.
Yes, just a quick point. So when suppliers are coming to us, they are asking what our social value policy is, because that helps guide them when they're doing their tendering. I mean, even insurance tender process, the question coming from all of the potential providers was what's your social value policy? So that they can be guided by what we're setting out that we want. Now, does that really make a difference? It depends. And I think that's what we've got the ability, because we're now setting out some aspirations, because that's what the suppliers want to see from us, so that they can fit in with what our policy is. And it's best practice.
Apology, I've got Councillor Clue, she was indicating I didn't see her, and then Councillor Stewart. Councillor Rear.
Chair, 4.5.1, significant numbers of officers and some members will be involved in procurements in various times. It's important that they understand the roles and levels of responsibility. I'd just like to ask, at what time, with what, would members be involved?
Through you, Chair. So for example, if we're bringing a report to board about recommendation for the construction to do with leisure, for example, we'd actually want to brief you as part of that, evaluate if you're involved in that evaluation, and the member working groups that are set up for simpler recycling and the leisure project.
Thank you, Chair. The reason I asked is because me and Councillor Barnett, obviously we're having a new thing built in Manchester Rec, and this is why I thought, well, is this something that we should have been involved in or not? So it's just a question on that they're doing a new building in the Manchester Rec. And obviously the procurement would have been done for whoever's going to build it and the architect and things like that. Thank you, Chair.
For you, Chair, that procurement was carried out prior to the Procurement Act and it's just now been implemented. I think one of the key benefits that the Leisure Centre will see is development of local apprenticeships for local people, and that's key for us to be able to do that. We don't want those people bringing apprenticeships and teaching people in other parts of the region. It's important we bring local jobs for local people and develop those skills. And this allows us to set that as a criteria that if they're going to have apprenticeships, they're for local people to be able to develop. And again, for local employment. Within that policy, if you're looking for more to offer a facility, you can talk about percentage of recruitment from within the borough as a whole, rather than whatever they wish to bring them. It just helps grow that economic development.
Thank you. Councillor Stewart.
Thank you, Chair. Having worked within local government procurement departments, although not as a procurement officer, it's always struck me that the point of procurement is not necessarily to buy things, but was to avoid challenge. And I think that what this policy does allow us to do is to, and by having that codification, as Councillor Simpson's referred to it as, is to say that when we are setting our percentages and setting our decision criteria, to do so in a way that is formatted so we can avoid that challenge with someone outside saying, well, you've only gone to them because challenge when it comes to procurement stops you doing what you want to do. As if we don't want to have any procurement challenge when it comes to the leisure centre because it will push the project off target and all of those kind of deliveries that we've been desperately trying to avoid. So the ability to have something to be pointed at, we did in accordance with this, just cuts out all of that possibility, I would suggest. So I'm very much in favour of the recommendation.
Thank you. Councillor Rear.
Thank you, Chair. Is there any plans to report back to this board about the impact of the?
You want the films amendments? Okay. In relation to social value, it's important now, that's important about regulation, especially against contracts. You want to know if those KPIs that are being set for, say, 5 apprenticeships have actually been achieved and delivered, and what benefits did it bring? So bringing that together is really important when you look at the growth and development of the, so we will bring those things back to you on a regular basis. It may be once every 6 months, it may be once every 12 months. It's up to you to set that agenda and that way of policy matters.
No. Did we add that to the report?
Feedback, yeah. Councillor Simmons.
And following on from that, theme, so is that something then that you would make as a requirement of KPIs from our contract? Because it's obviously a huge report to us, we would have to get that information from them. I'm thinking more about leisure at the moment. So, for example, when I've done development builds before, that organisation have communicated on a regular basis how much of their spend they have, that, and where they've also procured from the local community. So for example, of a £20 million project, for example, we consider £10 million of it being spent actually locally with local suppliers. So is that something that you intend to sort of give them KPIs on? So
It is, and we can share those draft KPIs and the requirements for that social value for the leisure facility if you so wish. I'm happy to send those out with the notes.
Okay, with the addition of regular reporting back, then I'll move that in the chair, seconded by councillor Clues. All those in favour? Thank you. Item number 11 is the communications team update. The report provides members with an update for the work that the communications team has undertaken for the period from April to October of this year. The number of items of communication is growing as we seek to ensure our residents and other stakeholders are increasingly aware of the work of the council and the events and services available in the borough. And this picks up recommendations from our recent resident survey. The council has seen an increase in its social media following and now emails regular updates to nearly 48,000 subscribers, which is the equivalent of 74% of the borough's population. Any comments, questions? Councillor Simpson.
Thanks, Jim. Just a point of clarification. The finance and value for money implication section. I'm reading that as saying that this will not cost this authority anything because the money is being paid for by someone else.
That is correct, yes. Councillor Bell.
Yeah, thank you. So, you saw Mark told me I'll get this wrong. So the leisure project always built in money for communications is part of the overall cost, and this half of his post is help for communication on that particular project. For simpler recycling, so in a sense that's our money because it's part of what I'm paying for the leisure centre. The simpler recycling costs, that we've got some earmarked funding from the government to encourage more recycling. Because it's targeted, we are targeted with a percentage that we need to reach. So we must spend it on that. So that's the other half of it. So that is extra money. The one for the leisure project is part of the overall cost of the leisure project, which has been built in from the start.
Okay, I'll move the recommendation from the chair, seconded by councillor Bell. All those in favour? Thank you very much. Item number 12 is the emergency management plan. The Executive Board is asked to consider and approve a revised emergency management plan. The plan was last updated in 2021, and this revised version has been produced in partnership with the Coventry, Solihull and Warwickshire Resilience team, who are working with the council to provide additional resource and expertise on these issues. If approved, the CSWR team will then lead training for officers on the revised arrangements and roles within the plan, and training will also be offered to councillors on their roles during an emergency. The plan will then be exercised next year with 6-monthly walkthroughs. The council is also working with the CSWR team on business continuity. Excuse me, and members will be asked to approve a new policy and templates for continuity planning that the council services will be using to update their plans. Any comments, questions? Councillor Barnett.
I was a bit surprised that we had a document in the public session that was marked as sensitive. I know there was some officer contact details that have been redacted out of it. Was that the reason for that labelling, or?
I think it's partly, it's through you, Chair, sorry, partly that, but it is a designation that our arrangements are sensitive. It doesn't mean it can't be shared. In fact, in some ways, there's a big reason for it to be shared. It potentially provides reassurance. So the fact it's a sensitive issue is not the same as confidential. But yes, the particular issues about member officer contact details and contact details that is put in those sensitive of those sensitive issues.
And sorry, to follow on from that, I know there is, as part of the inventory of stuff that's needed in the emergency, there is the contact list in there. Is there a need for the office contact details to be in this particular plan? When this particular plan is not going to be updated as and when officers leave, it's going to be out of date well before it's updated.
So Chair, for me, we'll have both hard copies and electronic copies of this plan because obviously a lot of stuff is done electronically. So for the version that we have, the non-public version, yes, we will have those. That will be one of the jobs, is to keep it updated. We also have a call out cascade, which is a little thing that sits in your wallet, and that's updated on a sort of 6 monthly basis, or when we're aware of senior appointments. So it is a job which my peer does it, and actually those up to date. And in fact, we amended the leavers form and the new starters form to include a tick box on there to say, does this need to doing so for some potentially digitised note?
And sorry, I did have one other point, which was on that inventory, the emergency inventory. I did notice there wasn't like any kind of battery powered torches or lanterns. And do we have facilities if there's a power outage?
That's one of the things we'll do as we do the walkthrough, is just to work out what we've got. We have got satellite phones and various other things if things now, but that's one of the things that we'll make sure we've got enough candles and matches and wind up radios and some.
Councillor Watson.
Thank you, Chair. I noticed in there it talks about business continuity. Those on the audit forum, I think we just need to put some focus around that business continuity because it is a concern, because there are some assurance issues and concerns around that. And just more generically, I think the detail in the plan is kind of really good from a perspective of where people do things. I think what might be missing for me from that is actually, I know under the methane rule, you've got type of incident, but the type of incident will dictate certain things. If it's a gas release, if it's an explosion, and it also, the locality might dictate something slightly different. And there's not necessarily a lot of detail in there about potentially some different types of things. I want to talk about types, but it doesn't then say, you may need to respond in a different way called different agencies based on different types. Thank you, Chair.
Chair, for me, that is a good point. It's one of the issues we're doing the emergency planning, because I think we've done enough sort of countrywide stuff through COVID, and rather disappointingly, the national plan exercise we've been doing is about a virus. I think I'm fairly up to speed on what we were doing. What I've said to CSWR is we want sort of an old-fashioned emergency. A gas pipe goes up, and the care home's on one side, and the kids are picking up on the other, and the water main goes through the middle. So I'll make a note. We can pick up any learning from that and add to the plan.
Chair, if I could just come back on that, because one of the other interesting ones is actually when you're denied access, you don't necessarily, for example, lose stuff, but you may not be able to get into an area or into a building, and that's slightly different because everything's functioning, you just can't get there. Thank you.
Councillor Simpson.
Thank you, Chairman. I think Vic was kind enough to send me a copy of the report a few weeks ago, and I apologies through you to him that I haven't yet responded to him on that. I think there's an awful lot of good in this, but I have some sort of more detailed comments which I'll read back. One of which is talks a lot about should, and I'd ordinarily expect will. Be much more definitive language to establish what is going to happen. It's like I wasn't sure when I was reading through it about the differentiation between what would happen if it was a North Warwickshire type event as opposed to a border type event. I'm not sure that there needs to be. I just wasn't sure where we were going with that. I think then there is a reference in here to learning lessons, but I'd like to see a lot more emphasis on the sort of, I think it talks about a hot debrief and a cold debrief. But actually, everything I see, the major advantage, one of the major advantages of these is actually how we make sure A, that we did it right, and B, we don't do it again, or somebody else doesn't do it again. So I would like to see a bit more in that. I'm also slightly concerned that I think he's referred to as the senior commander, will be the chief executive. Ordinarily, the general presumption, I think, is that it's not the head, but somebody else, because there is a need to ensure that the organisation continues. And you don't have a degree of paralysis because the people who are running the authority are also running the crisis. And so there's a need, I think, for clarity over who's actually going to be doing the day job while all of that is happening. And it, certainly in private industry, I think you'd expect a lot of this to be driven through the head of legal to ensure that there was, where appropriate, legal privilege on some of the outcomes and some of the recommendations. I didn't see anything in here that would necessarily allow us to obtain legal privilege to ensure that the appropriate safeguards are in place to ensure that we do everything without a fear that other things will happen that is unintended. One of the great examples of what happened
services for people. And we've seen that in public organisations. It's been very costly. So it's not just the physical aspect, it's the ability to deliver service as an instant emergency response plan and who you would have in terms of that and how you would communicate and how you would go through that process. I think our emergency management plan needs to be a bit more all encompassing for the threats that come to us in various ways.
So what's if I can, sorry, but just one other thing, couldn't see any reference to Martin's Law. Obviously, that significantly changed the physical thing around lockdown. So we need to kind of consider the unnatural threat silver and gold command, post Manchester Arena and Martin's Law. That fundamentally changed that whole lockdown piece. Is now legislation as well.
I think there's links here between business things that may be labelled business continuity and emergency plan, but perhaps if we draw that out clearer once we've got updated cyber plans, for example, and the business continuity management policy, we'll make sure that there's enough. I mean, business continuity may start like an incident, may start like an emergency event, and then so it's an artificial difference, but we could do with something now.
If I could say Martin's law is something slightly different because
Yes.
that is an actual physical, but it's potentially the use of technology. But about how do you actually then create a lockdown environment, particularly in schools and environments like that?
Thank you.
Okay, I don't see any more hands. So I'll move the recommendation from the chair. Subject to a bit of, subject to a bit of tweaking, are we not? And seconded by Councillor Simpson. All those in favour? Thank you very much, it's unanimous. Okay, so the next item is the English devolution and local government reorganisation. Now clearly, we've got a special full council meeting following, so I don't really wish to sort of prolong this meeting because we're going to debate, if any, at the full council meeting. So if the board is happy with the recommendation from the board to full council, are we happy to just have the debate, if any, as I say, within full council? Councillor Park.
So can I just echo my comments earlier, because it gives delegated powers to kind of tweak things. Can we make sure there are changes that they are distributed, because they're not always?
On this, on the, yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Move to the vote.
Okay, happy with that. So I'll move that recommendation that we're recommending to council. That's our preferred option. Seconded by, thank you, Councillor Phillips. All those in favour? That is unanimous, thank you. Item number 14 is the exclusion of the public and press. Consider excuse me, in accordance with section 100A(4) of the Local Government Act 1972. Whether it is in the public interest that the public and press be excluded from the meeting for the following items of business and the grounds they involve the likely disclosure of exempt information as defined by Schedule 12A. Thank you.